大家好，我是上官杰文, your friendly neighborhood Waiguoren, and I have not been making a lot of videos lately because I've been moving from Beijing to Wuhan. Here we are in Wuhan. You can see Wuhan behind me. This is a relatively new area. Today I want to talk to you about the diffusion of culture from China to Japan. From a Westerner's perspective, looking at Japanese and Chinese culture, we see a lot of similarities. Where do these similarities come from? Obviously there are differences as well, especially for more educated people. They see more and more differences between the two cultures, but it is undeniable that there are dramatic similarities between Japanese and Chinese culture. As early as 57 AD, various Japanese kingdoms were sending delegations to China and trading raw materials for intellectual goods like books and Chinese characters and courtly ideas. After 57 AD, China was at war with itself to some extent, and Japan did not send as many delegations, instead receiving Chinese culture through Korea, which was also importing Chinese culture more effectively at that time. But from roughly the 6th to 9th centuries AD, the Japanese court sent official delegations, 19 delegations in all, to Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, to the Chinese court to offer tributes and trade raw materials for intellectual goods. At this time, many Chinese ideas moved into Japan, where Japan discerned and chose various things to adopt and absorb into its own culture. Now, there was some interaction between Japan and China over the time between 57 AD and the 6th century. In 552 AD, a Buddhist monk traveled from China to Japan and increased awareness of Buddhism. Buddhism had started in modern-day Nepal and parts of northern India, and then had transmitted across Asia. And in 552, this Buddhist monk brought Buddhism more clearly into Japan. It had already been introduced in the 1st century, but this time it really stuck. And the Shitinoji Temple in Osaka, Osaka's oldest Buddhist temple, was built in 593 AD, just 40 years after the visit of this Chinese Buddhist monk. In addition to Buddhism and images of the Buddha, this Buddhist monk also transmitted additional Chinese characters, adding to the Japanese repertoire of Chinese characters, which comprised the bulk of Japanese writing at that time. Hiragana and katakana did not exist at this time, and Japan throughout was using Chinese characters, which was the basis of writing throughout most of East Asia and Southeast Asia at this time. During the Tang Dynasty, shortly after this Buddhist's visit to Japan, the Japanese court sent 19 delegations called Kentoshi, or Kentoshi missions, to the court in Chang'an, to the Chinese emperor, to offer tributes and to trade raw materials for Chinese intellectual goods. Some of the things that China exported to Japan, or Japan imported and absorbed into their own culture at this time, were myriad. The ideas of Lao Tzu, Confucius, and Buddhism trekked in again into Japan, but this time with myriad books. Each Kentoshi mission was comprised of 600 people, officials, and merchants traveling with them. And they were able to trade with Chinese merchants as they saw fit, not just those in the court at Chang'an. All kinds of things were imported into Japan at that time, in addition to Chinese characters, books, religious writings, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, legalism, penal codes, administrative law. Now, of course, Japan didn't take everything and just copy it, but they did choose and discern among all of the various things to import various aspects of the Chinese court system into the Japanese court, and those parts that they wanted to absorb diffused readily into Japan. Obviously, lots of more Chinese characters came with myriad more books coming over, including other aspects of Chinese advanced technology at the time. Metallurgy, fermenting, and other uses, swords, coins themselves, porcelain, and even chopsticks were imported from Chinese culture into Japan. Now, Japanese culture and Chinese culture are not entirely similar. There are vast differences, and Japan did create much of its own culture, Japan also was able to decide which aspects of Chinese culture they wanted to import. And some of those were significantly important, like measurement systems for measuring rice growth and the idea of redistributing land among farmers to increase the productivity yields for rice farmers. Undoubtedly, the Chinese court, being much older and thousands of years older in terms of its writing system, had dramatic impacts on Japan. Those impacts we can see today, even in simple things like noodles and soy sauce. Later this evening, I'm thinking about having some sushi around the corner. Not a bad return on investment. Clearly, Chinese culture has had a dramatic impact on Japan, and in future videos we'll discuss the impact that China has had on other cultures and nations around China as well. If you like this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.